Okay, ça c'est... Attends.
Yeah. Right, well, welcome everybody, in particular the representatives of guest countries and the intergovernmental organisations that are here, and a particular welcome to our new members of the ITF, Brazil and Costa Rica, who were accepted into the ITF this morning. This open ministerial is designed to enable member and guest ministers and heads of intergovernmental bodies to exchange with representatives from industry and civil society around a theme of common strategic importance. The theme this year is boosting sustainable economies through greening transport. The session will address the need for transformational change in the transport sector, including facilitating sustainable behaviours. It will explore how economic growth can be rendered more sustainable by decarbonising transport and reducing other environmental externalities of transport, such as its effects on biodiversity, air quality and health. I'm now going to pass the floor to the Secretary-General, Young Tai Kim, for some words of welcome. Over to you, Secretary-General.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Secretary of State Harper. And allow me to welcome again member ministers of the ITF and extend a special greeting to our new members in Brazil and Costa Rica. And how pleased we are to have you with us at the ministerial table, finally. And a warm welcome to our guest ministers and guest representatives of intergovernmental organizations as well. And this open ministerial is a truly unique global gathering of transport leaders from government and civil society and industry. And we come together today to share perspectives and seek new insights on how to pursue greener transport and mobility, while enabling and fostering economic growth. We are honored by and grateful for your presence at the summit and at this open ministerial, especially today. And I will look forward to this exchange, and thank you. And now back to you, Secretary of State.
Thank you. The first section is some short reports on some of the high-level policy dialogues which the ITF have done. So I'm going to introduce in order ministers from Cambodia, Poland and Argentina to report on their respective dialogues. So first of all, Minister Sun from Cambodia will report on the high-level policy dialogue for Asia. Over to you, Minister Sun.
Thank you very much. Chairs, allow me to report on the meeting that Cambodia co-hosted with ITF, the regional high-level dialogue for Asia in Bangkok on 22nd November 2022, which focused on sustainable, resilient, and inclusive transport. There were 7 Asian countries, including Cambodia, China, Laos PDR, Japan, Myanmar, the Philippines, and Thailand, and 5 organizations, including ADB, ASEAN, UNESCAP, GIZ, and the World Bank, attended the highest-level dialogue, both on-site and virtually. The discussion covered highly relevant topics for the region, such as transport connectivity, inclusive and safe transport, low-carbon transport, and digitalization. It also focused on sharing priority policies, best practice knowledge, and effective measures to accelerate the transition within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. The regional high-level dialogue provided a valuable platform for fostering cooperation between ITF and Asian country. It serves multiple purposes, include identifying new areas for deeper and more productive collaboration and exploring opportunity and concrete action to enhance sustainable, resilient, and inclusive transport in Asia. This could involve initiatives such as promoting the use of clean and efficient transport technologies, improving infrastructure planning and investment, enhancing intermodal connectivity, integrating sustainable transport solutions into urban planning, and addressing social gender inequality in transport access. By leveraging the collective expertise and experiences of ITF and Asian countries, the regional high-level dialogue could pave the way for collaborative efforts and implementable action that would contribute to the long-term development and improvement of transport system in Asia. Through sustainable, resilient, and inclusive transport, the region can achieve better economic growth, environmental sustainability, and social equity. Cambodia looks forward to participating in the second ITF Regional High-Level Dialogue in Asia this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'll ask Secretary of State Bittel to present the output from the high-level dialogue that we had on Ukraine.
Thank you very much, ladies and
ministrowie, szanowni państwo tutaj zgromadzeni. Chciałem kilka słów powiedzieć na temat.
let me say a couple of words about a very good meeting we have had organized as a part of cooperation of Poland and International ITF Forum. That was a great success. And that meeting was named Connecting Ukraine with Europe, world, and other countries, redevelopment of modern connection chains. And Central European countries are a gateway for Ukraine. It is our region where Ukraine gathers support from other countries. It is our region which transfer a huge volume of goods traveling from and to Ukraine. And our region is going to be of key importance for further development of Ukraine after Russian invasion. As a part of that meeting, we had to study visits for all those activities carried out for Ukraine. I mean, via Carpathia Road and the Polish-Ukrainian border crossing Korczowa-Krakowec. We had 2 ministerial roundtables and multiple bilateral meetings to combine our experiences and discussions on these important things. And after that meeting, which was participated by 27 official delegations from North America, Europe, and Asia, and we also made a common declaration supported by 36 ministers of transport from all over the world. And the measurable result of the meeting was defining of the major ideas for further discussions and to start further initiatives. They are to connect Ukraine with Europe and the world and reconstruct transportation infrastructure of our neighbor. They are all intended to overcome the difficulties created by the Russian aggression over Ukraine. These are the following ideas: providing stable financing from international finance organizations, strengthening of infrastructure of Central and European countries as a gateway for Ukraine, development of transportation Ukraine of double purpose, defining and prioritization of key infrastructural projects, planning of new infrastructure, transportation infrastructure as a part of the Green Transport Initiative. Let me more broadly discuss one of these ideas from the perspective of Poland and Central European states. We are a gateway for Ukraine, and it seems to be an important idea. We need to, for this purpose, we need to have stable financing from European financial institutions. This will help us to develop resilient transportation infrastructure and range-state transportation connections devastated by Russian aggressor. And this will also help to connect Ukraine with the neighboring countries and other countries of the world. Only by doing this, we will be able to achieve a long-lasting connectivity goals of Ukraine. And this will help us to prepare road and path for reconstruction of Ukraine. The success of that international event, which was a dialogue for Ukraine, wouldn't have been possible without the strong involvement of international ministers community and ITF. That wouldn't have been possible without the presidency and deputy presidency, Great Britain and Lithuania. It wouldn't have been possible without Mr. Secretary General Young Takim and his team. And in the name of the Minister of Infrastructure of Republic of Poland, Andrzej Adamczyk, and myself, I'd like to appreciate your involvement and presence in that conference. This is our common success. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And then finally, Minister Lopez to present the report on Latin America.
Bueno, buenos días a todos, a todas. Quiero agradecer especialmente al secretario general del Foro Internacional, al doctor John Tanquín, a su equipo, al equipo del Ministerio de Transporte de la Argentina y a todos los ministros.
Good morning to all of you. First of all, thank you to Secretary General Young Takim and all the other ministers who had the opportunity to visit our country and to be part of this high-level dialogue on transport in Latin America and the Caribbean. Of course, we would like to express our gratitude for the ITF having accepted Brazil and Costa Rica as new members. We met in April in Buenos Aires, where we discussed productive transport on the basis of equality for Latin America and the Caribbean. In April, we did not only convene to underline the importance of this region, we also had the opportunity to exchange our ideas and opinions, and together we defined challenges and discussed solutions that we deem practicable. There are common challenges, and on behalf of the multilateral institutions, we heard the confirmation that they are willing to support us. What unites us in the Latin American countries is an unequal access to transport options, and only if we work together will it be possible to overcome this situation of inequality. What we need is a common effort by local, regional, and national authorities, and the aim is to grant access to everybody. With the help of the high-level dialogue, we exchanged experiences and also discussed the progress that we already made. Also, we discussed the importance of putting people at the very center of our efforts. We do see that in some places it is very difficult for people to have access to new technologies, and cross-border transport has to be enabled, which of course is difficult due to the vast expansions of our continent. And of course, this situation is enhanced if you take a look at the competitive conditions in our countries. For us, it was possible to discuss our regional efforts and foster them. We want to support our countries with the help of multimodal transport opportunities, connecting our countries in a closer way. We also took a look at the economic exchange and how it can be promoted by more efficient transport. To that end, of course, we need the support of funding organizations and institutes in order to achieve the progress that we so desperately need in our region. We want to develop a system that is more resilient, sustainable, and robust, and this is the very basis for the development of our countries. Once again, we can support that by joining ranks with our brothers and sisters on our continent. For us, it was a very good opportunity to start exchange, to foster regional exchange, and to cooperate in a better and more equal way on our continent, granting fair access for everybody in order to provide the next generation with equal opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm very pleased that the ITF has eminent leaders from industry and civil society to lead us through our exchange this year. We're going to be moderated, you'll be pleased to know, not by me, but by Melinda Crane, who is the Chief Political Correspondent at Deutsche Welle TV and an experienced moderator, so that will hopefully keep us all in line. I'm going to introduce her. She's going to then present the guest speakers and facilitate the discussion. Melinda, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Secretary Harper, and many thanks also to Cambodia, Poland, and Argentina for your statements. And let me also add a very warm welcome to all of you, Excellencies, to all ministers, delegates, and guests. It is a great honor to facilitate an exchange that's aimed, as we heard, at sharing insights on how we align economic growth with transformational transport policy that promotes a true shift in mobility behavior, not only to reduce CO2 emissions, but to deliver some of those societal benefits that have just been mentioned, from access and equity and health to biodiversity and air quality. Those benefits, as you know, and as has been discussed here at the ITF, don't arise automatically. They take comprehensive enabling frameworks and targeted regulation and cooperation. And that, of course, is what we want to talk about here in this session. In preparation for this open ministerial, the organizers drafted a set of guiding questions aimed at eliciting an overview of current policy approaches to low-carbon transport across the many countries and regions represented here. I will say a bit more in detail about those guiding questions later on when we open the floor. Just a very quick word on our format. As you heard, we will begin with 3 short keynotes. Following these, I will open the floor and invite ministers to pose brief clarification questions to the speakers. Those are not yet the comments, those are clarification questions. We do have a very brisk schedule, as Secretary Harper has diplomatically hinted. Therefore, we also are going to ask everybody to please be concise and stay within allotted time frames. We have a lot of requests for comments from the floor later on when we open it. So I would like to just remind our keynote speakers, we're talking about 7 minutes as a window for each keynote, and interventions during the floor debate. Excellencies, if you can manage it, please, 2 minutes or under. I know that's a big ask, but it will greatly enhance our discussion and interaction. Also, as you know, some statements may not be in English. You've already discovered, undoubtedly, that we have translation available on the headsets. And now it is my great honor to introduce our first guest speaker. Her Excellency Amani Abu Zaid is the African Union's Commissioner for Infrastructure, Energy and Digitalization. She has worked in leading positions with multiple multilateral institutions, including UNDP and AFDB, as well as USAID, and is a vocal advocate for boosting efforts to fight energy poverty and ensure affordable and reliable access for all. The floor is yours, Madam.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, and allow me at the outset to thank His Excellency, UK Secretary of State, also President of the ITF, and to thank Mr. Kim the Secretary General of ITF has thanked Germany and Leipzig for hosting this important event. Today is a very important day for us. Today we celebrate 60 years for the African Union since its establishment in 1963. So me having the floor today couldn't be more appropriate to celebrate with you and to voice what Africa thinks and how it shares many of the issues and concerns that we are facing today. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of establishing the African Union, as our founding fathers mentioned then and still today, is the betterment of lives of everyone and the African integrity and unity. Transport is very much at the heart of this vision because in our Agenda 2063, we made sure that transport becomes, the physical expression of our unity, but also an enabler for the many development, social and economic development initiatives that we are having, especially the African Free Trade Area. This is, of course, as you know, that there's a synergy between sustainability, equity, and gender dimensions that we need to do and to implement in our programs. The landscape of transport in the continent still leaves many things to be desired, and when we say this, it also translates into fantastic opportunities for investment and for working with Africa in order to make use of this huge and growing market that is our continent. Excellencies, yesterday for those who have been there, we discussed so many things, among which how we are, projecting to the future, and we are using technology to our advantage. Again, Africa being not only the fastest growing in terms of population or urbanization, but also the fastest digitalizing region of the world. So we have taken several measures for the sustainability and access in transport. One of them, an important aspect, is to ban used cars, is to make sure that vehicles that reach the continent obey to the same security and safety standards that are applied elsewhere, and I'm happy that there are some car manufacturers here, but also we are promoting and pushing for urban transport and railways. And urban transport in Africa and railways are not a luxury. This is a necessity to eliminate the unsafe, unsustainable, otherwise vehicles known as informal transport, but also for us, it is green investment, and it's about time that everyone recognize that urban transportation in Africa and railways in Africa is part of the green investment, green finance, and to facilitate that and not to continue exacerbate the continent with unfair credit ratings or unfair that translates into very high cost of finance. This has been substantiated by a number of studies, last of which by the UNDP last month, that Africa loses every year about 75 billion every year just because of the unfair cost of finance, very much subjective to Africa. But moving forward, very happy to also share with you that our continent is determined to be a major player in the global transition, not just for ourselves, but in the global transition. Actually, we cannot even talk about global transition without having Africa at the heart of it, thanks to our immense resources, renewable energy, but also critical minerals. Now we are also determined to make it work for us by being an active player. So 6 of our countries are producing green hydrogen, some of which is fueling some of your vessels. Last 2 weeks ago, Morocco launched the first green hydrogen fueled car. We have 4 of our countries on their way to produce sustainable aviation fuel, and it goes on and on and on. So it's about time that we all rethink the way we do our work, the way that we collaborate, not to continue talking of a global north and global south. We are all in this together. And this has to be the spirit, this has to be the guiding way for all of us. Long live Africa, and praying for world peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those passionate words, Commissioner Abu Zeid. We go on now to Luca Di Meo. He is Chief Executive Officer of the Renault Group, which was one of the first European automakers to go all in on electric vehicles and remains a leader today. He's also held high management positions at Fiat, VW, Audi, and Seat, and also serves as president of the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's of course for me also a great honor and pleasure to speak with you today in the name of the European Car Manufacturer Association, ACEA. Now, making automotive zero impact is probably one of the hardest transformation our industry has been facing in its more than 100 years of history. We, people that are right in the middle of this endeavor, believe that three conditions are necessary to achieve the target. First, we should look at facts and don't be distracted by myth and legends. Second, we have to recognize that climate change is a planetary problem that requires a global perspective. And third, it is a challenge cutting horizontally across institutions and industries. It will be a team sport where the word complementing will be more important than the word opposing. Speaking about facts, I would like to start by reminding just three of them. First, automotive is for sure, and probably rightly, an obvious target to ignite public debate over environmental issues because our products are visible at every corner of our streets. But let's keep in mind that transportation as a whole represents 1/4 of the problem, and personal transportation 1/10 of the problem. This is not a way to escape responsibility, but just to put things in perspective. Second, the auto industry is one of the most committed to decarbonization. We want to be part of the solution, and we will be part of the solution. The percentage of car companies publicly committed in front of all key stakeholders to carbon neutrality puts us way ahead of any other sector today. And we talk, and I would say we walk the talk. Globally, vehicle manufacturers and battery makers are investing almost $1 trillion during this decade just in the transition to electric vehicles. An absolute amount and a percentage of our total capex way higher than any other industry. The third thing is that demand for personal mobility is and will be growing, especially in countries aspiring for the same economic and social development as that already achieved in developed countries and economies. Also, thanks to transportation of goods and people. This, of course, is also part of the paradox we have to solve. So how to answer growing demand whilst lowering the impact. But facts are facts, and they are always the only base for rational decisions and effective strategies. I said earlier that decarb is a global problem. European car makers, often with a worldwide footprint and market span, are very well placed to see that the approach should be different by regions, simply because the starting conditions are different. As European industry leaders, we are actually proud to contribute to give a response and a purpose and a competitive advantage to our economy through the Green Deal. Our commitment is clear and can be read black and white in our balance sheet and our business plans. But we also see that there will be no silver bullet technology able to bring all the markets globally at the same level of ecological performance at the same time. The global journey to decarbonization will be long and diverse. First, we have to ensure affordability, as we have been good at doing for decades. But we also know that pure electric vehicles will continue to be more expensive for at least one product cycle. Electric vehicles also require the construction of a fully new charging infrastructure. In Europe, presumably one of the most advanced markets, the challenge is still ahead of us. To hit our CO2 targets, the speed of implementation should be multiplied by 7 times from what it is today. It can only happen if the conditions are there for a concerted effort, allowing the infrastructure and the energy sectors to find a proper business case. And let's not forget that electric cars make sense from an ecological point of view if they are charged with decarbonized electricity. According to the independent think tanks, with current worldwide energy mix, small efficient combustion engines are often better throughout the cycle, throughout the entire cycle, if CO2 is the issue. This is why we say, give us the objective, carbon neutrality, okay, we take it, but let us find the best and most adapted ways for our citizens, and let's give technicians and engineers the possibility to explore alternatives, like it always happens in innovation times. In other words, we preach for the idea that technological neutrality should be at the core of any industrial policy and regulation. The role of public bodies is, in our opinion, of paramount importance at all levels. First, let me repeat it, this transition is not only about the automotive industry. It cuts horizontally across many sectors. It is a team sport that we must play together, working on the entire value chain. What we need from public bodies is that they take responsibility for orchestrating the strategies of different players, automotive, mining, energy, infrastructure, industry. The second crucial thing is coordination between countries and world regions. And I have no doubt that the global platform and forum such as the ITF has a particular role to push this forward. We need a very high level of cooperation, and the cooperation at the high level to secure trade, competitiveness, economies of scales, and common standards. Faced with the huge investment urgently needed to curb climate change, the world can't afford to give up the economic efficiency offered by a global and open market. And for that, we need the reciprocity, respect of multilateral rules, and the level playing field. We have no time to lose. On our side, we have no doubt that the only road to success will be built on technological neutrality and on our collective ability to think global and to look at the truth of things. It's up to all of us to write a story of global complementarity and coordination, not one of antagonism and fragmentation. And at ASEA, we are very, very keen on supporting such a process. That's why I feel very, very privileged to have a chance to be here today. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Renault CEO Luca De Meo. Our third keynote comes from Grazia Vittadini. She is Chief Technology Officer at Rolls-Royce, pioneering cutting-edge technologies for cleaner aviation like the green hydrogen-powered jet engine tested last year together with EasyJet. And she previously served as CTO of Airbus. Welcome. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Mr. President of the ITF, Secretary General, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to have been invited to speak here in Leipzig today, a city which already made transportation history almost 200 years ago when Germany's first long-distance railway was opened right here. Now, expectations management. I hope you will not be overly disappointed if you're expecting to hear about how luxury automotive is planning to decarbonize. The Rolls-Royce I serve makes engines for airplanes. These airplanes, which most likely brought you here in Leipzig this week, underlining this importance of this personal, real-life meeting, and also revealing the critical role aviation plays in enabling global exchange, not only of people and goods, but also the sharing of ideas and positions. Now, to continue to enjoy the benefits of aviation connecting the world, however, we must become more sustainable faster. Now, the solution is complex and the challenge is daunting. We are, after all, talking about a system in which just one single airplane aggregates, from the engine perspective, the power of over 50 Formula One racing cars, just to give you an order of magnitude. Now, to tackle this immense challenge, we must combine three approaches: increasing efficiency, leveraging sustainable aviation fuels, and thirdly, maturing what we called advanced generation technologies. Now, let's start with efficiency. You will say, no big deal, continuing to improve what you're doing, but this is a field where we can really achieve very tangible results almost immediately. The most efficient large engine, aero engine flying today on Airbus A350s is our Trent XWB engine. It has a 15% fuel consumption advantage versus the first generation of the family. This is really significant, especially if you consider that 80% of the global aircraft fleet today does not fly with the most efficient engine generation out there. Now, it is, as an industry, our responsibility to achieve and push for these efficiency gains, because literally every single drop counts. Whatever it is that we will be combusting, be it kerosene, sustainable aviation fuel, bio or synthetic, and perhaps one day even liquid hydrogen, well, it's very likely that at the beginning they will be very scarce and very expensive, so efficiency gains will pave the way for the introduction of alternative fuels. And of course, the less you combust, the less you emit. So it's an immediate benefit. Sustainable aviation fuels was my second point, or SAF as we call them. They have the potential of reducing CO2 emissions by up to 80%. And they can be used as drop-in fuel. You can just put them in the tanks with no or little modification to the airplanes and to the infrastructure. But there's quite a few challenges to master. We are certified today as industry to fly with a maximum 50% blend. There's good work underway to demonstrate that we could fly even with 100%, but the problem is the quantum leap we're going to need in production of SAF. Today, we're about at 300 million liters, that's 80 million gallons. We're going to need more than 1,000 times this amount annually, each year by 2050. And third thing to remember, SAFs are only sustainable, of course, if they're produced using clean energy. All these challenges are well beyond what one single manufacturer, one single industry, one single nation can achieve. So the industry, the energy and fuel producers, and regulatory bodies must work in unison. Third step, maturing third-generation technologies, which could abate in-flight CO2 emissions down to zero. There's two fields of innovation here: hydrogen and hybrid electric propulsion. Each come with their own challenges. To fly with hydrogen, we have to adapt not only the engines, but also the entire aircraft, because hydrogen has 3 times the energy density than kerosene, which is fantastic, but it has 4 times the volume. So to fit it on board an aircraft, you need to reposition the tanks, redesign the entire aircraft. For hybrid electric flight, well, the main challenges remain still with the high weight and limited, today still limited, energy density batteries can offer. There's additional challenges if you bring in the equation the infrastructure. These technologies will have an impact on the infrastructure on ground to refuel or recharge. And again, to be truly sustainable, these solutions depend on availability of green energy. Again, mastering these challenges will require a truly collaborative effort. Collaboration is the key word here, is the secret sauce, if you allow me. Our industry is ready. We're determined to pull this transition through, but we cannot make it alone. We will need, again, all sectors, energy, fuel sectors on our side, and you, as regulatory bodies, play a decisive role in driving these developments by setting clear targets to channel investments into decarbonization technologies. Please, technology investment, not taxes. Second, by providing harmonized standards and certification criteria worldwide, because aviation is a global business. And third, by pursuing a high level of ambition. This is very important for SAF targets in particular. The challenge is real. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm confident that by being bold and working together, we can master the transportation transition and keep the world connected for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Rolls-Royce CTO Grazia Vittadini also for that passionate call for collaboration and ambition. Dear Excellencies, we have a very brief window for questions of clarification directly to the keynote speakers. This is not the moment for pre-registered comments. We're coming to that. But if you have a question to one of our keynote speakers, then please give us a sign and we can briefly take it. And I'm talking about questions that would essentially elicit very brief answers as well. Anyone? Please put up your country named plate if you do wish to ask a question. Not seeing any nameplates tilted yet, then let me just very quickly add a few of my own, and I'm going to ask, as I said, for very, very brief responses, if I may. So starting, all of you have also, of course, mentioned the crucial need to unleash financing for this dramatic transformation that we're looking at. And Commissioner Abuzaid, you indicated the importance of mobilizing funds for public transport and rail, including in countries currently seen as a credit risk. What concretely would you recommend? How can we collaborate to close that gap?
Thank you very much, Melinda, for this question. What I said is that, green finance now is abundant, I must say, around the world. What reaches the continent actually is less than 2%. As I mentioned also, in a region that is needed not only for our own benefit, I believe in also win-win, but also for the world benefit. So what is needed is that first to be conscious of this. Two, to understand that our departing position is different from others. So when I say railways and urban transportation is green finance, because it is in our continent, in the absence of any other viable means except either, an old car or an old or a tuk-tuk. So this is green finance. So this is important also to realize. Three, blended finance, investment and encouragement of the private sector away from a stereotyped risk and not real, and the subjective rates, again, are based on, as I said, they are subjective. They do not reflect the reality. Just mention the crises over the last 3 years. Our continent is still resilient. This is again a proof of or a result of all the work that we've been doing all the last 20, 30 years in improving our economies and our economic structures. So what is needed is to unleash finance, especially green finance, is to rethink credit rating, unfair credit rating for the continent, base it into reality rather than anything else. And this, in turn, also will incentivize the private sector. This is what we need. And the private sector main hurdle is that, for us as well, is the very high cost to finance, blended finance. And here, of course, yesterday also we heard from EIB and others. So this will encourage also multilaterals and other private players to invest in the continent. And I thank you.
Commissioner, thank you very much for that. Let me go over now to Mr. De Meo. And you called for governments to take responsibility for orchestrating the strategies of different players across the value chain. One way governments seem to be doing that at the moment is with increasingly strong industrial policy initiatives. We've seen that, of course, in North America and China, as well as here in Europe with the Green Industrial Deal. The e-vehicle position that you mentioned, that European automakers have achieved, that has been quite strong, do you have concerns that it could rapidly be overtaken in this competition between industrial policy initiatives?
I think Europe has always had an advantage when it came to combustion engine technology, and this advantage is like reduced in the new world, which is okay. It's a competition and the world moves on. But it's clear that we lag a little bit behind from what we observe to the advance that, for example, China did on the electric vehicle value chain. And the recent, push from the American government with the IRA for sure will give a certain dynamic to this market in the US. I think that looking at the global perspective from a regulation point of view or industrial policy point of view from Europe, I would say we feel like Americans are stimulating, Chinese are directing, and Europe is regulating. And it doesn't take a pile of regulation to make a strategy. We actually need to push a strategy. We need to go upstream into the value chain in Europe if we want to make the EV successful, and also obviously downstream. What I mean is the whole control of the sourcing, the chemistry industry needs to be involved, and downstream is of course the energy and industry and the infrastructure industry. So it's a coordinated multi-value chain, multi-industry effort. And I think that we can win the thing, but that's why, like Grazia before, we were calling for cooperation, because it will be a team sport.
Thank you very much. Sorry, microphone malfunction there. Let me finally ask one really quite precise question to you, Grazia Vittadini, because I mentioned earlier on we're talking about a mobility shift that addresses not only decarbonization, but also broader and other benefits, including, for example, in the case of aviation, non-CO2 emissions. Those have come more and more into focus in recent years. What is Rolls-Royce doing in that area to tackle those very important contrails and their negative effects?
Yes, thank you for this question. Very pertinent and actual question. Well, Luca and I both did enhance the importance of collaboration, and especially when it comes to non-CO2 emission. This is where there still is a lot of research to be done to understand the science of phenomena like, for instance, contrail formation at altitude, right? So this is where, in particular, collaboration will play a particular role, making sure that we work hand in hand with the universities, with research institutions, to understand the mechanisms and be able, on longer term, to tackle them. Just to give you an example, at Rolls-Royce, we are working with 28 university technology centers and research centers worldwide with really this topic as a common denominator of our endeavors. One concrete and tangible example of this collaboration will be the first net zero transatlantic flight later on this year, conducted by Virgin Atlantic, powered by our Trent 1000 engines, and Imperial in London, the Imperial College is also playing a fundamental role to gather the data of these non-CO2 effects of flying with sustainable aviation fuel. So we're working with industry partners, of course, in addition, political authorities, and in order also to propose concrete measures around non-CO2 emission, monitoring, reporting, verification of non-CO2 emission at European level to start with. A lot of work underway.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grazia Vittadini, and all of our keynote speakers for your very insightful and important comments that you have shared with us today. Dear Excellencies, I would like to now open the floor for debate. And as I mentioned, the ITF did circulate guiding questions beforehand that read as follows. We welcome an exchange of best practices on transformative policies to support the green transition in transport, as well as approaches seeking to maximize the value of clean energy technology while maintaining accessibility for users and reducing CO2. We also invite you to share perspectives on how the transition to net zero transport can take into account adaptation needs and enhance social equity as well as health and well-being. And whoever wishes to do so can please weigh in on how we can most effectively incentivize private sector capital to support the green transition. So lots of potential topics there. We will begin with pre-registered comments, and we do also have lots of those. And Excellencies, given the wonderful turnout, we are under time pressure. So I would be very, very grateful if you would please try to keep your contributions to under 2 minutes. That would be enormously appreciated, and that would allow us to get to pretty much everyone who pre-registered a comment. And I will now call on countries who registered in advance their wish to speak. And I begin by going to Secretary Harper and the United Kingdom.
Yeah. Melinda, thank you very much. Let me try and set a good example, since I was having to do that moderation process earlier. Greening transport is a challenge requiring a rapid and wholesale global transformation of the way we travel and the technologies we produce and rely on. It was very good to hear about the 100% SAF aviation flight, which is being worked on and supported by the UK government. But it's also an opportunity, as we set out in the themes of our presidency, not just to reduce emissions, but boost our economies, improve air quality, health, the places in which we live and work. And the world over, policymakers and industry are waking up to the economic opportunities of the net zero transition. As governments, we must continue to set out our ambition and the direction of travel, learning from each other where our interventions are successful and working together to deploy new technology and infrastructure at the scale and pace that's needed, which is why organisations like ITF are so valuable. I attended the launch of the Transport Outlook yesterday, and the message from that was clear, as set out by the Secretary-General. Current ambitions not sufficient. We must do more to meet our Paris Agreement commitments and avoid the worst impacts of climate change. But there is cause for optimism. The Transport Day at COP26 was a landmark moment for international cooperation on transport decarbonisation. As hosts, the UK presidency delivered a clear message that the global transition to zero-emission vehicles and net zero transport was rapidly accelerating, was irreversible and hugely beneficial. And the achievements that we set out then at COP26 included the launch of the Zero-Emission Vehicle Declaration, the Clydebank Declaration for Green Shipping Corridors, the International Aviation Climate Ambition Coalition, and the Global MOU on zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles, all of which are playing a critical role in reducing the environmental impacts of transport. We've continued to champion these initiatives and others throughout our presidency and will continue to do so going forward, supporting our colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Harper. We go now to Sweden and the Minister for Infrastructure and Housing.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the keynote speakers for very interesting interventions. The green transition is not only possible, but it also brings enormous opportunities for business, for job, and for economic growth. The transition to a fossil-free transport system will require major investments in innovative industries that can translate the best ideas and innovations into functional solutions. As politicians, we need to provide the right regulatory framework and policies to attract these investments. Electrification is one of the most important factors to succeed in the transformations of the transport sector, and the Swedish government is committed to accelerate the pace of the electrification. The industry in Sweden is also paving the way, and we now see an ecosystem taking place when it also comes to battery productions, and gigafactories is now taking place in different parts of Sweden, but also the battery value chain is very important, and we also have the mining of rare minerals in our country. That is important for the Swedish market, but also on an EU scale and a global scale, we see a lot of opportunities there. We also, when it comes to SAF and the aviation sector, see opportunities when it comes to use residual products from the forest industry to produce more of what we need, namely SAF and less emission fuels. And here we also see opportunities. And I can also just highlight that last year in June, we saw the first 100% fossil-free commercial flight with 100% SAF in Sweden between Stockholm and the Malmö in the south part of Sweden. So the technology is already there. We also see plans of electric flights, and they will have it in commercial air in just a few years with a Swedish company. So the technology, the innovation is there. It's also very important now that the regulatory framework and the investments are followed, so we speed up the electrification and our common goals that we will reach together if we work hard together. So thank you.
Thank you very much. To Sweden, we go next to Croatia and State Secretary Gasko Bocic.
I'm trying. Okay, thank you, Chair, dear Secretary General, distinguished colleague. First of all, I would like to state that I'm pleased that this relevant topic is discussed today, as well as the recognition of the important role of transport in the development of sustainable economy. The greening of transport is a very important component in reaching climate goals. But given the very high cost of introducing new technologies, sector policy needs to be designed in a way that doesn't financially burden the end user. Although it is the primary important to decarbonize the road transport sector, taking into account its contribution to overall emission, there is an obvious need to make a serious effort to redirect passenger and freight to more environmental friendly form of transport, such as rail, maritime transport, and island navigation. Croatia, as a country that connects the European Union with the countries in the Western Balkans, especially through the TEN-T corridors, take into consideration the development of the green technologies in all fields of transport sector when planning its infrastructure. This is especially evident during the touristic season when millions of our fellow citizens visit the Adriatic coast. In Croatia, we see clean technology in transport as an opportunity for our sustainable economy. The goal to have infrastructure for electric vehicle on every 50 kilometers on motorway and every town and city with more than 20,000 inhabitants has been achieved. There is plan to increase support for the introducing the zero-emission vehicle and related infrastructure, and we can present a correct example in the area of rail transport. The first phase of modernization of the rolling stock is underway and is going to be finalized in 2025, by which time the national operator will have 70 new conventional electric trains and 2 train prototypes, 1 battery electric train and fully batterian trains. Also stable energy connections across Croatia. And In conclude, I would like to point out the Republic of Croatia fully support all effort aimed at decarbonization and the sustainable implementation of green policy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We go next to Japan and the Vice Minister for Transport, Tourism and International Affairs. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Facing disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's aggression against Ukraine, we transport ministers and the Ministry of Transport should reaffirm our essential objective of achieving a better life for all people through transportation initiatives. In addition to the decarbonization efforts in automobiles and aviation, which were presented by the speakers earlier, I'd like to emphasize that decarbonization of international shipping is also important. IMO GHG reduction strategy will be revised in July this year, and we need to agree upon a target of phasing out GHG emissions no later than 2050. In order to achieve this target, Japan is working on the development of zero-emission ships and the decarbonization of ports and harbors. Based on this understanding, Japan, as the G7 president, will host a transport ministers meeting next month on the theme of achieving accessible and sustainable transportation through innovation. Under this theme, ministers will discuss ways to achieve equal access to mobility for all people, as well as transport policies for decarbonizations. I'm aware that these discussions at the G7 Transport Ministers meeting and those at the ITF have many points in common. In collaboration with the ITF, Secretary General Kim will be invited to deliver a keynote speech at the public-private session of the ministers' meeting. In order to further raise public understanding of the ITF's activities in Japan, we plan to publish a Japanese version of the flagship document, ITF Transport Outlook 2023, which has been in high demand by Japanese practitioners and researchers since its first release in 2021. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much also for your kind words about the ITF document. We go now to Portugal and the Secretary of State for Infrastructure.
Thank you very much. Greening transport is usually synonymous with energy transition and with electrification in some way, be it through batteries or with hydrogen as an intermediate energy source. However, if we rely solely on a technological shift while keeping the system more or less unchanged in its structure, we will most certainly fail in our objectives. I don't mean to spoil the overall optimistic mood about the role of technology, but we must not forget that technological progress is not linear and that there are sometimes fundamental obstacles. For example, the efficiency of batteries has not significantly improved in the last couple of decades. The progressive increase in electric vehicle range has been achieved mostly by having larger batteries in the vehicles, much in the same way as what's happened with our mobile phones and our computers. This means that increasing efficiency is essential. An important tool for increasing efficiency of the transport system as a whole is, of course, modal shift, wherever it is possible. Modal shift can look different depending on the context. In freight transport over land, it can mean shifting cargo from road to rail. In an urban setting, it can mean a shift to using a bicycle or walking with the corresponding changes to public space. This is why transport policies are always intertwined with economic and social policies. The changes to the logistics chains on the one hand and the way our cities are built on the other hand are two main examples of this connection, but not the only ones. One final remark that I already made in the Ministerial Roundtable yesterday is about the need for investment. In several countries, including my own, the levels of investment in transport infrastructure have been well below what we need for the past 2 decades. This is something we all need to work together in order to achieve the goals that we have committed to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we go now to the Secretary General for Transport of Spain.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not going to discover the wheel in my intervention. Many things have been already said. Of course, to advance decisively in transport decarbonisation, we need regulation, we need public investment together with private investment. But we need to work in two other areas that are equally important. The first one is to provide enough information to citizens through education and campaigning to increase awareness to the risks of climate change in their lives and the impact of their mobility habits on it. Because individual decisions are essential in the global reduction of emissions. And the second one is to deal with the complexity of governance in mobility and transport. Firstly, because the sectorial approach is not enough. As it's been mentioned before, we need a cross-sectorial policy with goals clearly coordinated among transport, industry, energy, etc. Secondly, because all levels of administration are involved in transport, local, regional, national, federal, and even international. And thirdly, because, as it's been said many times, we need to work together through the whole value chain. We must establish alliances, we must establish shared agendas, and strong governance structures among the different stakeholders, public and private. And that could seem obvious, but it requires a great effort. And somehow, a cultural evolution in the way the public administrations are working. In Spain, we are working and developing all those elements: regulation, public investment, increasing society awareness, and enhanced governance structures through a new law on sustainable mobility that is now in our Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And your words about collaboration and cross-sectoral approaches undoubtedly are resonating with our keynote speakers, all of whom emphasized the importance of that. We go now to the Netherlands and the Vice Minister for Mobility.
Thank you, Chair. Our policies in the Netherlands are focused to make sure everyone has access to mobility. But more importantly, that everyone has access to clean mobility. And this is why we as the Netherlands working in various international coalitions to move up the market and scale up solutions. I mentioned the global MOU on zero-emission freight. I mentioned the call for action to promote active mobility that was launched at the COP27. Today, I would like to highlight another crucial partnership, the one between the energy and the transport ministers. They have to team up to roll out the charging infrastructure, and fostering and deepening good cooperation is paramount. Ladies and gentlemen, the ITF provides the foundation for fact-based policies and enables us to shape up the global agenda for transport. Building on this foundation, we can work together on joint policies and global standards. The Netherlands is currently chairing the Inland Transport Committee under the UNECE. Working together on global legislative frameworks and standards for roads, rail and inland shipping. And looking forward to work with you and the ITF to strengthen this foundation of knowledge, data and best practices to design and implement effective global policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for your concision. And speaking of concision, dear Excellencies, we have an ever-shrinking window, and I still have at least 11 interventions on my list. So may I ask you to, if possible, slim down your remarks even more. Very, very grateful. But if you can come in under 2 minutes, that will certainly make the lives of our colleagues who have to rearrange the room for the family photo much easier. So great thanks for that. Let me now go to Canada and the Associate Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for the opportunity to comment. In Canada, transportation accounts for 25% of total greenhouse gas emissions. And as such, we are steadfast in our commitment to decarbonize the transportation sector. Vehicles, locomotives and rail yards, planes and airports, as well as marine vessels and ports. To be truly effective, we must address these emissions in a manner that ensures our transportation system remains affordable, inclusive, and accessible to all. We are working with stakeholders, provinces and territories, academia, and Indigenous rights holders to develop and implement climate action plans for all modes of transportation. These plans include ambitious yet attainable climate targets, and they explore the full potential of electrification, digitalization, clean fuels, hydrogen, and advanced technologies, while outlining key actions for governments and industry. For example, Canada's Action Plan for Clean On-Road Transportation includes a suite of measures to grow consumer confidence in zero-emission vehicles. We are making their purchase more affordable through incentives. We are making charging more accessible through infrastructure build-out, and we are increasing vehicle supply through ambitious mandatory sales regulations. We know the task ahead is not easy, but it is essential. We need to harness our combined momentum, build on past investments, and look at all possible actions for governments and industry alike to ensure our transportation systems are well-positioned to continue to support the day-to-day lives of our citizens and businesses while also addressing the climate imperative. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I go now to Finland and the Director General.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be today here in Leipzig. The green and the digital transition truly reinforce each other in the transport sector. Sustainable growth lies on innovative, user-driven services based on utilization of data, new technologies, and artificial intelligence. I would stress the importance of 3 elements that are needed to make a successful transition in transport and mobility. Firstly, focus on enabling and reinforcing digitalization. With the better use of data, we can also achieve more efficiency at the transport system level and more attractive services on the user level. Better understanding of user needs will help us to develop a transport system that is fit for purpose also in the future. Secondly, a holistic approach supports the transition. Instead of mode-specific thinking, we should take a comprehensive view to the transport system where different modes of transport as well as public and private services complement each other. And finally, the transition cannot be done by the public sector alone. We need fast and systematic cooperation between the public and private sector, as well as the academia and all the users on all levels in order to achieve our ambitions. The current funding model for transportation has reached its limits due to declining tax revenues. Future measures to ensure funding must be designed to support the green transition. Green taxation in transportation should be implemented in a fair manner, and the decisions should be based on knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we go now to the Minister from Senegal.
Voilà, je vous remercie de m'avoir donné la parole. Je remercie aussi la commissaire de l'Union africaine pour tous les messages qu'elle a délivrés donc, à l'endroit de cette table ronde. À présent, je voudrais partager un petit peu l'expérience.
Thank you very much for your kind words, and thank you very much for being able to speak here. Senegal has seen to it that its population has better access to mobility in Dakar. Well, Dakar accounts for 3% of the surface of our country, the country of Senegal, and Dakar accounts for 75% of the economy.
par rapport donc aux besoins de mobilité.
This is a positive response to the needs of the population for mobility. There are three aspects which are important. Firstly, we need a new train system of 55 kilometers between the airport and the city of Dakar. We need these developments of the rail system for the whole country, for the country at large. Secondly, we need an extension and advancement of bus lines, 18 kilometers, between northern parts of Dakar and the Dakar city center. That would affect 300,000 passengers from now till the end of the year. And thirdly, this is electrical buses. This is a project which we have just founded, which we have just launched, going until 2025 to the tune of 2.5 billion euros. This is a good response to present challenges to have good mobility in Senegal.
We go next to UNECE and the Executive Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary General, Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting UNECE. Dear colleagues, we all understand the need for a transformational change in the transport sector to green the transport sector that is emitting 23% of global energy-related CO2 emissions. And within the transport sector, more than 71% of CO2 emissions are from the inland transport. Why I say that? At the UNECE, we have a very special and important body that is called Inland Transport Committee. And on its annual meeting in February this year, the United Nations member states agreed that we will work out together ambitious strategy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in inland transport based on the United Nations legal instruments under under our purview. And that strategy must be supported by strong action plan, very concrete milestones in that. And it will be approved again by our UN member states in the next meeting of ITC in February next year. So this document has immense potential, is profoundly needed, and I wish you, our member states, every success in developing and implementing it. Madam Chair, I will skip the part what the governments can put into this plan. It's on like incentives of governments, on tax credits, on research, PPPs, green tourism, etc. So it will come hopefully in 1 year, but I will stress out that we need that international alliance of all stakeholders. It means member states who are at the cutting edge of technologies, as well the member states for which climate change poses an existential threat, and not tomorrow, today, you know. And we need all transport leaders from multilateral development banks, intergovernmental organizations, non-governmental, the private sector. So just for all of us to work on that long-term goal, and of course UNECE and our Inland Transport Committee is here to assist our member states in achieving the SDGs and in tackling the harmful effects of transport on the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And next is the Acting Deputy Director General for Mobility and Transport of the European Commission. Okay, and he cedes his time. Thank you very much. Now we go to the World Bank and the Global Director for Transport.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to thank the ITF and the UK Presidency for bringing all of us together for this discussion. There are about 1 billion cars in the world today, and this number could double in the coming decades, with the bulk of these new vehicles coming from the developing world. This can have significant social and environmental implications. Between fatalities resulting from road crashes and death caused by air pollution, the world sees nearly 8.5 million premature and preventable fatalities every year. Transport also represents a quarter of GHG emissions, and this proportion keeps rising. This is why we need to change mobility behaviors and scale up solutions so that people and goods can move in a way that is safer and more sustainable. At the World Bank, we are shifting our portfolio to address these global challenges. We work with mayors to redesign and densify cities so that people can live closer to their work and avoid unnecessary travel. We work with transport authorities to shift mobilities to cleaner modes, such as public transport, active mobility, or rail transport. And we also work hard with innovators to improve the carbon footprint and efficiency of each mode, such as through promoting electric mobility. Our current portfolio in the transportation sector amounts to about $36 billion, and all the projects that the World Bank approved last year included at least some aspects that benefited the world's climate. In Glasgow, under the UK presidency, we have established a dedicated fund to take this work even further. The Global Facility to Decarbonize Transport, established in 2021, has begun work on an inaugural set of projects that support developing countries in their efforts to build low-emission transport systems. We are very thankful to our founding financiers for their generous support, the UK, Germany, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. With the help of this new facility, we are working with developing countries to prepare for the electrification of thousands of buses, improve public transportation, and advance zero-emission mobility. When completed, these projects will improve the quality of life for citizens in many corners of the world: Peru, India, Ghana, Egypt, and the Pacific Island, to name a few. We are using every last dollar of GFDT to get these projects off the ground. More support would enable us to move from technical assistance to direct support from decarbonized transport programs. The task is urgent, but the evidence is there. Developing countries should not have to choose between reducing emissions and improving mobility. The two go hand in hand. We know that better transport saves life, and we look forward to working with partners to scale up safe and clean mobility solutions around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we go now to the Secretary General of BSEC.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Let me start by saying that I am particularly pleased and honored to participate in and address this year's ITF Summit. Well, environment protection and green economy have been high on the agenda of my organization, not least in the sector of transport. It is for such reasons that BSEC avails itself of and is implementing since 2017 a climate change adaptation strategy for the Black Sea. Further on, in May 2019, a common maritime agenda for the Black Sea was endorsed by the member states as a platform for action for the preservation and the restoration of the environment in the Black Sea area. That includes building a greener and more environmentally friendly transport system. For this purpose, a number of joint projects financed by the European Union and other international organizations and institutions are implemented by BSEC permits. Projects such as the facilitation of road transport of goods or facilitation of border crossing in the BSEC region are expected to contribute to such an endeavor. Before concluding, I would like to fully subscribe to what has been highlighted during this meeting, namely the need of better coordination and cooperation. And I'm referring to the need of coordination of national transport policy at national level, but equally to the need of an enhanced coordination and synergies at the level of the international organizations active in the area. Giving just one example, a better coordination and efforts aimed at transforming the Danube River into a genuine water transportation would highly contribute to the objectives of this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we go straight over now to OSJD.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairman. Your Excellencies, dear Minister, delegates, participants, and guests, one cannot underestimate the importance of economic growth, stability and security it brings. Transport is one of the key aspects in boosting economics and moving towards green solution. I would like to thank the organizers for their passion and efforts in creating a platform that each year brings us all together to discuss various aspects of transport development. This is not only an opportunity to exchange views, but make actions, and actions is what is needed when we aspect of building safe and resilient transport system. As the most environmentally friendly railway transport has a share of CO2 emission of only 1% among all modes of transport. The need for more economic and efficient transport system made intermodal transport segment grow rapidly for many years now. Our practice within the Organization for Cooperation between Railways shows great result of intermodal transport in our countries, which help to balance supply chain, save fuel and allow to transport goods with significantly reduced emissions. Taking the importance of new challenges and the growing requirements is needed to concentrate on development of tools that improve the quality and reduce the impact of transportation on environment. All the challenges we face during pandemic and the light of current geopolitical situation make us to look for new tools, for new ways, new opportunities and solutions. I strongly believe that the best result can be achieved in cooperation with our members and partners that ensure mutual experience and expertise exchange. I would like to wish all the participants constructive work and brave ideas to overcome the challenges we face. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And we finally go to the International Organization Traseka Secretariat and its Secretary General.
Thank you. Distinguished ministers, ladies and gentlemen, in order to save time, let me please briefly highlight main activities of the Permanent Secretariat and their impact on most relevant issues. Currently, Traseka, with support of partnering organizations, is undertaking a range of initiatives to address border crossing challenges, increase the efficiency of transportation regardless modes of transport, digitalization and support seamless transport connectivity in the region. These are some of clearly identified priorities within our strategy and action plan. Today, I would like to note the importance of the development of greener multimodal transport. All you can see that electricity-driven transport has not replaced traditionally fossil-fueled vehicles so far, and it can take a long period of time than expected. As a supporting step and less time-consuming measure, I propose to focus on maritime connections in Black and Caspian Seas, because they can decrease emission from road vehicles and not electrified railway line. First of all, it is important to actively use transportation of goods in semi-trailers only, so we can load more cargo on vessels. Moreover, piggyback transport of road vehicles on railways can also reduce carbon footprint with direct support of governments. And lastly, I would like to draw your attention to the necessity of modernization of vessels in order to introduce environmental-friendly types of fuels. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that proposals I have mentioned will make a significant contribution to the further development of transport connectivity. The Permanent Secretariat expresses its readiness to cooperate in order to ensure green and sustainable connectivity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And finally, the Minister from Chile. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would like to mention 3 brief ideas or initiatives that build on those mentioned by the experts, in which cooperation among countries might be needed to accelerate decarbonization.
regarding sustainable airline fuels, we might be starting a path in which all countries might be requested to produce them, even though production cost and capacity will certainly vary among countries. Then I see an opportunity for international agreements so that in an international flight between country A to B, the SAFs are really provided or mostly provided by the country facing the most convenient conditions, and that is an agreement that we should take. Second, regarding the need to make electric vehicles less expensive, I think this is the main hurdle since vehicle operation and maintenance costs are significantly lower. I think there's an opportunity for countries to agree on technical standards that will make the transition faster. For example, in agreeing about the standards for charging equipment so that we all have a similar technology to make this transition faster so that we adopt common norms. And maybe there's also opportunities for bus fleets that reach certain standards that could favor economies of scale that might foster the process, especially in developing regions. Finally, I see an opportunity to foster the conversion of internal combustion vehicles towards electric. It seems like a very effective strategy that could be very relevant for the developing world in which electric vehicles are really expensive. Finally, I would like to endorse the words from Portugal regarding raising the perspective strictly from electromobility to other policies. If we were to change 10% of our fleet to electric, it should have a very similar effect of having 10% less trips or due to telecommuting, or if the average distance is dropped by 10%, or if 10% of car drivers shift to bike. And of course, if we were to take those three other alternatives, we would not only be benefiting from carbon emissions, but also from traffic, health, or pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, thank you very much. And to all of you, dear Excellencies, many thanks for your very constructive insights and inputs. That does now wrap up our floor debate, and I will hand back to Secretary Harper for closing words, but I will be back in a moment to tell you about the family photo, so don't all leap up from your seats when he's done, please.
Thank you very much. Well, it just leaves me to thank you, Melinda, for moderating that so brilliantly and saving me the chore of having to do it again this morning, and you kept everyone to time much better than I did. Thank you also to our three fantastic speakers. I think that gave us all some food for thought and provoked a very useful discussion. And thanks also to my fellow ministers and heads of delegations for their contributions both today and yesterday. And as Melinda said, I'm going to formally close the meeting, but I'm going to hand back to her. She's got the remarks about how we're going to organise the family photograph before she formally closes the session. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Secretary Harper, for those kind words. And we will now embark on our family photo. And we are going to do things a little bit differently than we have in the past. Hopefully that will lead to a smoother approach and somewhat less turmoil than we've all experienced here before. So as I understand it, the table's on the top half of the circle, which is which part of the circle? Okay, you see Mary doing her stewardess-like movements over here. This half of the circle will be cleared away, as well as the chairs on stage. Right, okay. And we would ask everyone who is in this area, so in this top half, to please move outside of this area. In other words, move to the lower half. Once we're ready, we're going to open the stage for everyone to take their places for the family photo. Once everyone is positioned, we will first have the ITF official photographers in the circle to take photos, then the journalists. I would ask you to leave the hall to the side for a few minutes following this briefing, your briefing by Michael Claude, and then everybody else is welcome to come in and take photos. So journalists, that last message was for you. Okay, thank you.